So, I have been taking Emperor's Children for a spin recently in Warhammer, which isn't really an army, and I don't really want them to be an army because I'm kind of enjoying this list, and I know once their codex actually comes out next year, this list is not going to be runnable anymore. But anyway, so I thought I would make this little pre-thing before I go to my tournament on Saturday, because just to go through the list, what the thought processes are, and all that kind of thing. So, I took Emperor's Children to my last 40k tournament, and went 1-1-1. Or, well, 1 and 2 technically, because it was GW scoring, but on WTC it was 1-1-1. And so, I have some thoughts. I've gone back to the drawing board on certain subjects, taking out certain units that I felt were completely redundant, or just kind of didn't do anything. And we have come up with the following list for the Emperor's Children. So, to play Emperor's Children, all that it means is that Lucius the Eternal is your warlord. If you include Lucius in a list, he has to be your warlord. And it basically means three things. 1, Noise Marines are battle line. 2, you can only take Slanesh Demons as allies. And 3, if you happen to play Pact-Bound Zealots, everyone has to be Mark of Slanesh. Which makes sense. So we are obviously not playing Pact-Bound Zealots. For our detachment, we have Veterans of the Long War, which I played this detachment a bunch when it first came out in a Crusade campaign, and ended up switching back to Pact-Bound for that. Because, to be honest, I hadn't really made the list with veterans in mind. I was just playing Black Legions, like this is the Black Legion themed detachment. I was like, so, makes sense, it's a Crusade campaign, it's a narrative campaign, blah blah blah. So what does it do, anyway? It basically just gives you Oath Moment. It gives you Oath Moment, it's called Focus of Hatred, I believe, but anyway, it's just Oath of Moment. So, beginning of your command phase, you pick an enemy unit. Every single attack, ranged or melee, made against it by your army, I think non-cultists, but anyway, in your army, they get to reroll their hit roll, which is great when comboed with the Dark Pacts. And then this resets on every single one of your command phases. Pretty good. Can't complain, especially combined with army-wide lethals or sustains. It means you can really fish for those 6s. As far as stratagems go, not the best showing. Like, Renegade Raider still has just objectively the best stratagem pool. But we get Armor of Contempt, reskinned as Contemptuous Disregard, I believe is what the Black Legion one's called, which lowers the AP of an incoming attack by 1 for the phase, which is very, very nice. It's not as good as people think it is, but it is pretty good still. Normally, you use it sometimes to actually ensure survival of a unit, not normally. Normally, it's to force your opponents to overcommit to killing something. Say, for example, someone's shooting a bunch of Chosen with AP 3 guns, or even AP 2 guns, you pop Armor of Contempt, suddenly they're having to shoot with a bunch more stuff as if it's AP 3, especially if you're in cover or something, and basically you're halving the amount of, nearly halving the amount of casualties if it's only AP 2, or even AP 1, right? It's like, so it is a very, very good stratagem. The other one that we get is it's a reaction move. If you move within if you move within 9 inches of us, we can move 6 inches infantry, which this list is almost 100% infantry, so we can really take advantage of that. The other strats are just kind of situational. So one of them is 2 CP. When your Oath target is destroyed, you can move the Oath to another visible enemy within 12 inches of a character. This one is okay. It is 2 command points, and it requires having a character within 12 inches of something you actually want to Oath. Normally you use this as big target, you shoot the shit out of it, and then the Chaos Lord who's lining up a charge moves the Oath target to whoever he's about to charge, so therefore he gets the hit rerolls, right? That's generally the way, and he gets the reduction, so it only costs you 1 CP. That's generally how I use this stratagem in this detachment. I think that's the best way to use it. The other one is 2 command points. It gives fights first to a unit, but only if they are within range of the engagement range of the Oath of Moment target. So this is once again is a bit of a mindfuck for your opponents, because it means that, say you're playing against something really beefy like Angron or Gazgul. Actually, I think Angron already fights first, so not so good on him. No, never mind. Fights first beats fights first. What am I saying? I'm being an idiot. So you put it on Angron, you put it on Gazgul, you put it on one of the big Chaos Knights or something, if anybody's actually running that, or like a Bloodthirster, or something like that, something really scary that wants to get into melee, and then they have to really be careful now, because if they charge something that can actually kill them, they get fights first, you can kill them before they even fight, right? It's like, it is a bit of a mindfuck. Once again, it does cost 2 command points, though, so it is pretty expensive. Then the other two stratagems, one of them is situationally quite useful. It lets you either fall back and shoot or advance and shoot. This is very good on a few units in this list. And the other one is basically never ever going to come up. It's basically 1 command point, a unit, when it fires flamers this round, it automatically shoots 6. We don't have anything with more than 1 flamer. We have a few flamers, but you can't use it on Overwatch. If you could use this on Overwatch in conjunction, it would be maybe usable, but you can't. So it's just kind of there. The only unit this is particularly good on in the game, I think, is Plague Marines, because they get 2 flamers in their squads, but because you can't use it on rubrics, unfortunately. Be a bit broken if you could. But yeah, so that's the basic rundown of the detachment. Let's get into the units. So for HQs, we have Lucius the Eternal. Obviously, Emperor's Children, you have to have him. He has to be the Warlord, and he unlocks by being Warlord. Noise Marines become Battle Line, and that's really all he gives you, but that is a decent enough buff. He also makes your faction technically Emperor's Children to fuck with WTC results. So anyway, he gives a squad fights first. He has fights first. He gets a Strength 6 Heavy Flamer, he gets 8 attacks, precision attacks with Strength 5, 2 damage, and when he dies, whoever kills him has to take a leadership check, and if they pass it, they take D3 mortals, if they fail it, they take D6, and then if he kills something with this, he respawns. Which actually comes up slightly more than you maybe think when combined with fights first. So anyway, he's overall 95 points for that. He doesn't hit quite as hard as a Chaos Lord, but he is great at objective skirmishing, because the way I've normally played Lucius is you just drive him to an objective, you pop him and his legionaries outside of line of sight, and then he basically throws the gauntlet down on that objective, says, come fight me. Unless you're playing against like Guard or Sisters, and they can just shell the shit out of him with artillery. Or Death Guard, I guess, as well. Quite good. Then we have Fabius Bile as our second HQ choice. He's quite undercosted, I think, for what he does. He basically gives a strength and toughness boost to his unit. He gets up the first time he dies. He gets a ton of attacks in melee. He has a decent pistol with anti-infantry 2 up. And he also can blank an unsaved wound once per round. So he's fairly beefy. We then have 2 Chaos Swords. I mean, I think they're probably arguably the best unit in the Codex. They just go in every list. They're just really good. Obviously with Demon Hammers, because there's no reason not to take them. And then one of them has the Mark of Legend Relic, which basically lets him have a hit, wound, or save reroll once per round. And the other one has Warmaster's Gift, which procs his crit wounds on a 5-up against the target of Hatred or Oath of Moment. So yeah, they are just there. They're really good. They are good at killing elite infantry. They're good at killing little infantry. They even take dents out of tanks. They are just insanely good this edition. So that's the HQs. Nothing too fancy. We do give up a fair few assassinates, 4 assassinates if your opponent picks it, which means that they can reliably score assassinate almost every round of the game. And aside from Fabius, really none of these guys are particularly tough or in units that are particularly tough. So if your opponent does play Fix, which I don't find many people ever actually do, that is a consideration, but 4 leaders is relatively small for a lot of armies these days. So yeah, that is our HQ pool. As far as who they're paired up with, Lucius is paired with Legionaries because he can only join Noise Marines or Legionaries, but there's no reason to join him with Noise Marines because they're ranged and he wants to be in melee. So yeah, he's with Legionaries. Fabius Bile is with a big 10-man brick of Chosen to maximize that strength and toughness boost. They also don't need to transport at that point because they can advance and charge and they're fairly beefy. He's kind of designed for mid-board skirmishing because it takes a lot of effort, especially with Armor of Contempt, to really shift him off of the objectives. So That's what he's for. And then the Mark of Legend Lord is with a squad of Chosen, just a 5-man. This allows him to basically be really independent. With Advance and Charge coming with Rhino, with rerolls, he can basically hunt whatever straggling unit is annoying me. And then the last Lord with the War Master's Gift is with Legionaries, because he has the War Master's Gift, he's a bit more predictable of where he's going to go. And I also want him more skirmishing on objectives. He is one that is going to really benefit from the move the Oath target stratagem. Because effectively you can kill his Oath target and then he can move it to somebody else. Charge, but he's not as mobile. Which does mean that I have to be much more mindful of how I'm deploying him, and my opponent's probably wanting to nuke out his transports as soon as possible. Basically, don't want him and Lucius in the same transport, because that becomes just like such a juicy target, because they're both kind of immobile once they've fallen out of the transport, unlike the other Lord who can run around. So going into the battle line for this list, battle line is kind of important now in Pariah, because of specific buffs that you get, such as the battle lines can shoot and do actions, or advance and do actions, or whatever it is, and then the raised banners where you just get straight up VP for having battle line. So we have 10 cultists, which you'll see in like every CSM list at this point. They're there to die, but they just sit on your home objective. They screen, they sticky objectives, they're just generally for 50 points. Can't go wrong. We then have 2 units of Legionaries. Legionaries still are really good. They're one of the best basic troops in the game, in my opinion. Little 5-man squads, because they get 2 power fists, or whatever the hell they're called, heavy weapons or whatever. I think 2 plasma pistols. They get the rerolls to their dark packs. They're just a neat little unit. They get reroll 1s in melee, or full rerolls if their target's on the objective, so they can really punch above their weight class. They're really good with the Chaos Sword, because they give him 4 rerolls for his dev wounds, and they're just there to skirmish on objectives. They're not that flashy, they're not that tough, but they're only 90 points for 5, and I think they're very, very, very good, and that's that. We then have 2 squads of Noise Marines, which are one of my actual favourite units, and I'm going to be sad. I don't really care about losing Lucius to the Emperor's Children. Lucius does fill a niche in CSM that nothing else fills, to be fair. The fights first thing. There is no other unit that does what he does. But Noise Marines especially is going to be sad to lose. I know you'll still be able to ally them in, and they'll be battle line, and you won't need Lucius anymore, but the problem is that the Dark Packs, losing the Dark Packs makes them kind of bad, and makes me think that I'd just rather... I don't know what would replace them, really. Raptors, I think, at that point. I think Raptors fulfill a similar enough role to them in a lot of ways. But they just get a ton of shots. They get a ton of shots, anti-infantry. They have a flamer, they have a power fist, they also have a, the Blastmaster is just such a good gun, because it has the 6-shot anti-infantry profile, or the 3-shot anti-heavy infantry / light vehicles one, which in this detachment with the rerolls becomes a lot more reliable. They also can, if push comes to shove, advance and shoot with their sonic blasters. Not great, but it's still pretty good. I'm going to miss them next year when the codex for Emperor's Children come out, but unless for some weird reason they still have like sustained hits or something, or lethal hits, in which case... yeah, I'll keep them. But they really benefit from that Oath and moment. And they're just really good. They're cheaper than Legionaries too. And I've been running them in a lot of detachments, and I'm finding them really, really good. So that is the battle line. Cultist mobs mainly to hold the home base and screen a little bit for deep strikes. Legionaries to skirmish on the smaller objectives. And the Noise Marines just to harass. Going into the other units, we have a 10-man brick of Chosen and a 5-man brick of Chosen. So as I said, the 10-man is with Fabius, and the 5-man is with the Lord. Chosen, I don't know what to feel about them, because they're not that destructive really, but they're just really good to have advance and charge. So like the 5-man squad is just to give that Lord advance and charge really. The big brick is just there for killing elite infantry, killing normal infantry. They don't really do much to tanks, but they are just very fast. They're fairly cheap now. You can't really lock them down, because they can fall back and shoot you, and they can fall back and charge you. They're just a very, very generally good unit. We then have a 5-man squad of Nemesis Claw, which I'm going to be really interested to see how they actually perform here. Now, they just recently got 40k rules. For people who don't know what Nemesis Claw actually does, they do quite a lot. So they have stealth, which does mean you don't want to put any characters with them, unless you have to be playing that Night Lord's detachment, where you can give a character stealth, but... wow, shock horror, the Night Lord's unit is designed for the Night Lord's detachment, but... Anyway, so the you can put so you put stealth on them, which doesn't make them that much more survivable. It just means your opponent kind of has to overcommit a bit to killing them, which is kind of what you want, especially in Chaos Space Marines, where you're all about kind of trading small squads. forcing your opponent to perhaps waste 2 units of shooting on the Nemesis Claw instead of only 1 because of the -1 to hit, especially if you're in cover, and you can combo this with Armor of Contempt to make them actually quite durable, is a very interesting predicament. But they get +1 to hit if you're below starting strength, and +1 to wound if you're below half strength. The half strength one's probably never really going to come up, but the +1 to hit is quite nice, especially since they have pistols, but they can also just grenade you to turn that on. And then, as far as war gear goes, they're kind of in a weird spot of being in between a legionary and a chosen, because they kind of have the stat line of a legionary with 2 wounds and stuff like that. But war gear wise, they're much closer to a chosen squad, because they only get 1 power fist between the 5 of them, as opposed to legionaries get 2. Chosen only get 1, obviously, but they get the paired accursed weapon like the chosen get. They get a normal accursed weapon like a chosen gets. They get effectively a 1 damage power fist, which I don't know how that fits in. Right? It's like their chain glaive, whatever it's called, is it's a strength 8 AP. I think it's AP 1 damage with sustained hit. So it's kind of like a higher strength, worse AP accursed weapon. And then they just get a chainsword with the Voice Eater, which is the main reason I think people want to run them. Is the Voice Eater says that enemy units engaged with them can't have stratagem used on them, which is the really good one, because that means, for example, no CP rerolls, no insane bravery though. It means no, if you have a fall back and shoot or fall back and charge stratagem, that triggers before they move. Yeah, they can't do that. No fight on death. No reinforcements for guard or crew or whatever. Not that anybody runs crew anymore, but you know what I mean. So I'm interested to see how they play. Obviously, they can't advance and charge. We'll see. They're 20 points more than legionaries, but they're 15 points cheaper than chosen. So they kind of fell into this really weird zone where I'm like, I don't know what to think of this yet. So we'll report back on that. Then we have 3 units of obliterators. I really like obliterators. They seem kind of good again, especially in this detachment, because they get the reroll hits. So they're kind of unreliable because of the variable shots, and it makes it hard to kind of predict them, because sometimes they'll overperform hilariously, other times they're basically worse than a Havoc squad. So it really varies, you know, how good they are. They have been nerfed a fair amount since the Codex came out, but at the same time, they've also got a pretty big points drop since then. They're fairly tough, T7 with 5 wounds each. They are slightly less tough than the Predator, but not by much. They get a 2-up armor save and a 5-up invulnerable save. 5-up invulnerable save is a bit redundant with a 2-up armor save because there's very few AP4 weapons in the game anymore, but it's nice to have, I guess. Especially if you're playing against like Thousand Suns. To actually have an armor save is kind of an invulnerable save is actually kind of nice, but it's not as relevant as you think it is. They hit decently well in melee. They have a lot of good options. I find that obliterators aren't really as anti-tanky as people think they are. They're much more better as a anti-infantry unit, but they can deep strike, which means, and there's only 2 of them, so it's very hard to screen them out. And they can indirect once a game, which is huge. Indirect fire is one of the best abilities you can get. I'm sure it's only once a game, but it just means that nobody's safe from these guys. 6 of them dropping in, you can't hide from them. Like, good luck screening out 24 inches from, right, like, you can, but it's just difficult. And then we have 3 Chaos Rhinos to drive our lads around the battlefield. So that is the list. What do I think going into this is going to do well and struggle with? So anti-tank is a problem for us. In basically every list I build, it always is. But especially here, I'm kind of hoping that something like the Oath of the Moment will reduce the redundancies, but the obliterators are basically what I'm relying on to kill tanks, outside of like the Chaos Swords, just getting lucky with the death wounds. This list is fine if you're playing into armies that have 1 or 2 tanks, or even like 3 tanks, 4 tanks. Like, I'm trying to think, like, I feel like a lot of average armies have like between 2 and 4 tanks, right? Because 2 squads of obliterators will basically kill any tank fairly reliably, especially with the hit reroll. So into like Space Marines, as long as they're not Iron Storm, right? Into Eldar, into Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines only have about 2 to 4 tanks on average, I find, and then Rhinos. But like a lot of those things, we trade fairly well. Into like Knights, Chaos Knights, even Iron Storm, a bunch of stuff like that, we're just not going to have the bullets to take a lot of these units down, which means we're really going to have to rely on scoring primary and secondary, which Knights is like a really bad matchup for me. I just don't have the damage to kill them. And we can't really contest the Knights on primary, because they just kill us too easily. So that is a problem. We have an awful lot of skirmishing capabilities, so against any sort of elite infantry armies, we're pretty set. Custodies is a kind of a problem for us, but like most other things, we outshoot a lot of melee armies, but can still hold our own in melee, and we outfight a lot of shooting armies, but can still shoot them decently well. So like World Eaters and Tau, like I can still shoot you pretty well if you're Tau, right? It's like you win the firefight, but you don't win it by as much as you think you will, and then in melee you're dead. And same with World Eaters, like I shoot the shit out of you, but now once you get into melee with us, it's like we can still fuck you up, right? Like So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Matchups I'm worried about is Knights, obviously. I think Sisters is a very bad matchup. We rely on hiding our guys very, very much, and Sisters have so much indirect fire that it makes things a bit problematic. Same with Imperial Guard. They're just very strong right now, and I think that their sheer amount of artillery they can bring to bear. I know Guard artillery's got a lot worse because take aim doesn't, because of the capping at hitting on force thing, but like even still, it gives you an awful lot to worry about. But that is kind of my thoughts on how this list is going to go. So I'm excited. I like this list a lot. Units I'm a little bit iffy about taking out was the Vindicator. But it just doesn't do much for me, I don't think, in this list. The only things that maybe we want is some Predators. I do have a Predator sitting on my painting table. Unfortunately, I assembled it as the las cannon variant, which I think is the wrong one for this edition, really. I think you want the auto guns, but that's the only thing. Like 2 Predators, maybe. Drop an Obliterator to the Nemesis Claw, take 2 Predators. Maybe, but overall, I think Cypher would be good in this list, but I don't own a Cypher, unfortunately. But yeah, anyway, so that is the thought process here, and we'll see how it goes.